Take a deep breath.
So my first guest on my podcast, Over the Wall, is Deepak Chopra. And if you don't know Deepak Chopra, he's written over 100 books around meditation and wellness and the mind and science around happiness. He's been on Oprah's show. He's just an amazing person in the world. I've been very fortunate to be friends with him for a few years, and we have spent time together, and he's really become almost like a mentor to me because he's made me understand there are strategies and frameworks as an entrepreneur I can use to really go over the walls, to get through those things, to manifest the dreams I have. In this podcast, he talks about things like the happiness formula, finding your purpose, how to create creative breakthroughs, and the basics of meditation and how that can serve you on fulfilling your dreams and your visions. Grab a cup of coffee or something, get a pad and paper out and pen, because you're going to be able to take a lot of notes around things that can help you be successful on your journey as an entrepreneur. So thanks for being here, Deepak.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
You know, before I jump into some of the things in the book and some of the learnings, you've been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. And when I step back and think about you have a very successful business, and you've had to probably make twists and turns to get where you are. And I want to talk about what are some of the challenges you faced in your own business and building your brand and doing things in the world to be successful on the level you've done.
So, Robert, as you know, I'm a physician, and I trained in internal medicine, endocrinology, neuroscience in various hospitals in Boston, all of them academic, associated with Harvard, BU, Tufts University. And when I was in my training, I had the insight that body, mind, brain, and consciousness were one phenomenon, and that we could actually self-direct our biology in the direction of healing. So in the 1970s and 80s, this was a very radical idea. I tried to publish my findings, research, and other things in medical journals, and no one would accept what I was saying.
Well, why was that? Why wouldn't they accept? You obviously had this vision of how things should be, and today, obviously, people think, wow, but why was it? I mean, why couldn't people see it? You saw it.
Yeah, until the 70s, science is only about physical stuff, mental, anything to do with the mind or consciousness, you relegate to psychologists and psychiatrists and other people who are not in what we call material science, and it's not considered legitimate science. So I could see why it was not accepted. But then I tried to get those same things findings published in, in mainstream media and other outlets like Publishing World, and everybody rejected what I submitted. So finally, I self-published my first book in 1985 or before, and it became a runway bestseller. And then I started getting calls from Jackie Onassis and mainstream publishers, Stephen Hawking's editor. We want to publish our books, and suddenly it was the beginning of my journey. I decided I couldn't satisfy my academic peers, but there was a hunger for this. And then, in my mind, somebody said, if you want to do what you want to do, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, in your words, then you have to have a PhD in entrepreneurship. So I said, what does that mean? And they said, PhD, passion, hunger, and drive. If you have passion, hunger, and drive for what you believe in, go for it. Don't worry about the critics. So I decided to be immune to criticism, fearless, and go for it. And
but let's dig in that for a second, because as an entrepreneur like myself and other, it's easy to say that, I'm just going to be immune to criticism. But there's the external world's telling you you're not good enough, you shouldn't do this, you're not the. Most entrepreneurs find that challenging. It can't be just you turned it on. Was there things you had to do to really get there with that? Because I could see you like the young Deepak, like, man, nobody wants to read my stuff. And then obviously you had the hit book. But how did you get over that the doubt, people putting bad things in your mind or trying to get you to not fulfill your dreams? What'd you do?
It was a process, see, because you can't say I'm going to be immune from criticism, and next time somebody tells you you're an idiot, you get offended. So, but then one day this thing clicked in my mind. If I was going to be hurt by criticism, then I would be offended for the rest of my life, and then that's not a good way to live. So in my mind also there was a subtle distinction between immunity to criticism, but also responsive to feedback. Sometimes your critics are saying things that you could learn from. So, there was this balance between immune to criticism and responsive to feedback. What could I learn from my critics that actually made sense also? And there were both critics, skeptics, and what you call cynics. Critics, soon became my best friends. Skeptics said, show me the science, which we now have. And cynics, I decided to ignore. So there's a difference between all these three people. I also created something called, I started to think, most entrepreneurs start out with the idea, and the first thing in their mind is their exit strategy, which means they're already thinking about how to make money. And I think that's a wrong start. So what I did was I decided to define money for myself. Here's my definition of money.
Okay.
Money is the symbolic exchange of values, period. So this is my definition of money. Money is the symbolic exchange of values. So if your values are alcohol and cigarettes and pornography and all of that, then you might as well move to Las Vegas and you'll be very successful, okay, in that ecosystem. Yeah. On the other hand, if your values are to create a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, then I have to create my own ecosystem. So in order to create my ecosystem, I created something for myself first, but ultimately I shared it. And I created for myself, and I would suggest anybody who wants to do this, your ecosystem of entrepreneurs, they should do what I did, which is I created a soul profile. So normally when somebody goes for a job, you look at their bio. So what are their qualifications? Where did they go to school? The kind of thing you find on LinkedIn. That's your bio. But the soul profile actually gives you an idea of the meanings and contexts and relationships and the stories that make you human. Not a successful whatever, CEO, whatever, but actually amplify your humanities.
I want to talk a little about, get into the book a little bit, because I think it's like it's a Bible for entrepreneurs if you really follow what you write in there. And so a little about, like, when I was 27 years old, I had a company for about 4 years. It went under. I lost everything, moved to New York, broke, slept on a couch because I couldn't afford an apartment. I end up at this psychologist, this guy called Dr. Frank Morio. And he listens to my life story. I talk about my childhood, and everyone's got challenges with their childhood, and I built this company, I lost everything. I remember one day he came in and he said, look, I've heard everything I need to hear. I got it. And he turned to me and he said, you're fucked. This is what he said. Yeah. And I said, and I'm laughing now, but at the time, and he said, look, let me explain. You have a pair of glasses that were put on you as a child. And through certain experiences, these glasses, they're very blurry. But when you perceive the world, you think they're clear because you've never had another set of glasses. So what's happening is you're making a lot of mistakes. You're attracting the wrong people in your life. And what you need to do is take those glasses off and learn to put another pair of glasses that'll make the world clear for your vision and dreams. So when I look into the book, and when you talk about reality, and you say there's objective and subjective, and being conscious and being unconscious, and you speak about being aware, I want to talk about this a little bit because I think for entrepreneurs, a lot of times you have these big dreams, but you make a lot of mistakes. Mistakes are good, you learn from them, but you may make the same mistake 20 times and you don't fulfill your dreams. So I want to talk about, when you write in the book about reality, this idea of reality, the world in which I perceive, how do I know it's real? How do I know I don't have a blurry set of glasses on?
Rob, this is a very important question and a very important discussion. I'm not sure all your entrepreneurs will be ready for it. So the question was, how do I know the world I perceive is real? And the short answer is, it's not real, period. Period. Anything that you see, if you can see it, touch it, taste it, smell it, think about it, imagine it, conceptualize it, feel it, it's not real. What is real is the consciousness that is projecting that world. And you are sharing that consciousness with other people who are projecting the similar world. Right now, for example, what we see in the world is, let's face it, we see social injustice, economic injustice, extinction of species, war, terrorism, an unsustainable planet, and basically conflict everywhere, and conflict with ourselves and our relationships in the world. And now, given that, it looks like insanity, right? We're actually heading together for a collective suicide mission with a world that has mechanized weapons of destruction, atomic warfare, biological warfare, cyber warfare, where every solution, by the way, to every problem is a war. War on drugs, war on war, war on terrorism, war on cancer, war on pandemics, war on everything. No creativity. Recycling the same ideas, the same concepts, and that becomes our collective reality. Now, if your internal dialogue says, I want a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world, you have to start with that. Then you hang out with people who are the same. In Eastern wisdom traditions, they say, take refuge in the Sangha. Sangha means your own ecosystem, your community. Take refuge in a higher cause. Then I ask myself, who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? What am I grateful for? What's my vision? Can I express it with authenticity, integrity, and a higher cause? And I don't care if it works or not. It works.
So you're saying, which is kind of I'll call it rule number one to entrepreneurism, is that embrace the uncertainty, because life is uncertain. And we tend as entrepreneurs to have very uncertain lives because we're creating things like you did, a book, or you had an idea that nobody liked because they didn't see it in the world until you brought it there. So there's a lot of uncertainty with new ideas and creativity, right? So you're saying just embrace that. But then it seems like as humans, if I dig a little deeper and go into, we can have a voice in our own heads that tells us, going back to entrepreneurs just in general, I'm not good. I'm not the right person to do this. I don't have what it takes. I'm not smart enough. I didn't go to the right schools. There's a little voice that's in your head. And what is that voice that then is in there? Because that creates a lot of uncertainty, That
voice in your head is your childhood. Okay, so recently there's been a lot of work on what social scientists call the happiness formula. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
Yes, yeah,
okay,
of course.
So H stands for happiness, is equal to S. S stands for set point in the brain. And 50% of our happiness experience every day comes from the set point in the brain. The set point determines how you look at a situation. Are you looking at it as a problem, or are you looking at it as an opportunity? That's the only difference. So unhappy people look at everything as a problem. They criticize, condemn, complain, playing the victim. On the other hand, successful and happy people, it doesn't matter what the situation is, somehow in their mind, they say, hey, what's the opportunity? Like right now, during the pandemic, I talked to a lot of innovators. You'd be surprised at the opportunities they're coming up with in the world of technology, service, goods, etc. Now, how does that set point get determined? It gets determined in the first 5 years of life. So if your parents gave you, particularly your mother, but because your first contact is your mother. So when a child looks at its mother, it's looking at her eyes, facial expressions, body language, gestures. It's looking for 4 things: attention, deep listening; appreciation, she's noticing me; affection, she loves me; and acceptance, she accepts me just like I am. The baby doesn't have a language yet, but it's responding emotionally. So if you get these 4 A's in your life in the first 5 years, you will look at the world very happily as an opportunity, no matter what the problem was. But if your parents were all constantly complaining, condemning, looking at problems, playing the victim, then you grow up with that attitude, because that's a phenomenon in the brain we call mirror neurons. The neurons of the baby mirror the neurons of the parent. Okay, so that's 50% of your happiness experience. Can it be changed? Yes. How do you change your set point? Through everything I talk about in the book, Total Meditation.
Yeah.
Reflection, self-inquiry, mindful awareness of the body, mindful awareness of mental space, mindful awareness of relationships, mindful awareness of your connection to the world, and ultimately transcendence, going beyond all this to the core of your own being. When you engage in this kind of reflection, which I call total meditation, spontaneously, your internal dialogue changes. You start to see possibilities. So that's the first thing, set point.
Yeah, but one of the things, let's challenge it a little bit, but I know when I was going through this journey when I was 27 to 30, and you write about this, about anxiety. Like I would get these panic attacks. I mean, literally, like I would feel like I'm having a heart attack at 27. My arm would go numb. I'd be heating up my body. It was crazy. You talk about it in here about being stuck. Talk about being stuck in your book. So maybe you can talk a little about that. How do you get unstuck? And it didn't, for me, it took me 24 months. It took me 2 years to get unstuck. It wasn't like a one shot thing.
In the book, there's a whole section, a whole chapter on getting unstuck. But you get unstuck through reflective inquiry, by asking those questions. Who am I? What do I want? What's my purpose? Etc. What am I grateful for? Actually, once you ask yourself, what am I grateful for? All hostility and anger goes away right that moment. You can't have hostility and gratitude at the same time. It's impossible. Okay, so that question is very important. But anytime you have anxiety, anger, hostility, guilt, shame, humiliation, depression, you start on the wrong track. There's not even a start. So you have to define success as you have to also know what success means to you. Success is the progressive realization of worthy goals. It's the ability to love and have compassion. But most importantly, those two are not going to happen unless you're in touch with your creative center. And your creative center cannot be accessed when you're anxious or have any of those emotions.
Have you ever been anxious? Have you ever had anxiety?
Yeah, when I was 14, 15, as a teenager, I was anxious. As a medical student, I was anxious. As an intern, I was anxious. As a resident, I was anxious. And then I realized that I wasn't helping my patients. If I was like that, how could I help my patients? So let me complete the happiness formula, by the way. So 50% is set point. The second part of the happiness formula is H. So H is equal to S plus C. C is conditions of living. Do you have enough money or you don't? And that contributes about 12% to your daily happiness experience. So if you win the lottery, you'll be ecstatic, but in 6 months, it'll plateau. And in 1 year, you'll back to be your set point. In 5 years, you might be worse off because money becomes an obsession. Money is very important, but it's not the most important thing that makes you happy. Just remember that 12% is your daily experience of happiness comes from money. The remaining 40% comes from what we call voluntary choices that we make every day. So there are 2 kinds of choices we make every day. One is for personal pleasure, food, alcohol, sex, shopping, etc. Do they make you happy? Yes, they make you happy, but transiently, for a day or 2. Real happiness comes from finding meaning, fulfillment, and purpose. So you have to ask yourself that question. What is my purpose? What would I do if I had all the money and all the time in the world? But more importantly, how can I make other people happy? In fact, if you keep that one intention in mind, how can I make somebody else happy? That's the instant way to success. And you do it without motivation. 4 A's: attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance, and you're on your way.